think the right amount of friction is the key, as you just said, right? Because a little bit of friction is actually powerful for this team. If it gets a little uncomfortable, you get so many leads, it gets a little uncomfortable for the sales team to actually manage them. That's not a terrible thing. And then if we're a little slow and we're pushing that marketing partner to make sure we're getting pipeline, I mean, that's actually a productive friction there, isn't it?
It is a productive friction, but I think one of the things that's really critical in getting your teams aligned is low ego and high EQ at your senior leadership. So as a chief revenue officer, chief executive officer, COO, or even the CMO, those people in the C-suite or VP, depending on how your organization is structured, you need to walk into situations knowing that there are going to be differences in opinions, but an openness to understand how those opinions may take you different directions. One of the most natural tensions between like a chief revenue officer and a chief marketing officer is the CMO will come in and see, oh, well, let's see, we have brand that we need to serve to, we have customer marketing we need to take care of, we have a share of voice that we want to expand into the market with our brand. Looks like our content or our demand isn't really there for positioning correctly inside of the market. You know what sales said? Blah, 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 blah. I heard none of that. What is it going to do for me for revenue?
Yeah.
And the CMO comes back and says, well, in about 9 to 12 months, we should start to see these things change. And the CRO goes, I'm not going to be here in 9 to 12 months. I need leads that are converting into pipeline right now. And the paradigm there, and what I think is probably one of the most complex parts of the CMO role, is balancing what sort of tactical things can we do to drive short-term impact into our pipeline growth, our revenue growth, and ultimately into the commissions and pocketbook of our sales counterparts, while also managing the long-term building out of the infrastructure and things we need to create an engine that will become evergreen and will live into perpetuity. So there's a really challenging balance point. But if you look at it in reverse, right, the organization won't exist 9 months from now if we can't hit our quota or we can't hit our revenue or EBITDA goals. If you focus on what's short term in that decision and late consideration phase in your funnel, making sure you really shore that up and then work upstream, you'll find that there's a much tighter alignment with sales in how they look at the world, because they're like, oh, you thought of me and what I needed to do for the organization first before you went out and said, oh, well, marketing, we've just got this great brand and we're doing all these things. But to me, it just looks like arts and crafts that didn't end up in my pipeline, didn't end up in my pocketbook, and creates that additional kind of ego moment, if you will, right? If I'm serving you and what you ultimately need to serve for the business, short term, we can be much tighter aligned long term.